2 years after leaving her in tears, the Duke met her eyes, and silence claimed the ballroom. Lady Mariana Lorne stood at the edge of the Countess of Arbrook's ballroom, her gloved fingers resting lightly upon the marble balustrade. Candles flickered in crystal chandeliers overhead, casting golden light upon faces that whispered behind fans and gloved hands. 2 years had taught her how to appear unmarked by sorrow, how to smile as though her heart had never shattered. "She bears it well, does she not?" someone murmured nearby. One would hardly think she had been abandoned so cruelly. "The Duke of Valehart left her standing at Lord Harcourt's garden party, I recall," came the response. "She wept then, poor creature. Now she wears indifference like a crown." Mariana's fingers instinctively sought the cool madre-pearl bracelet at her wrist, its smooth surface a comfort against her skin. She had worn it that day, too. The last day she had seen Adrian. The last day he had looked at her with love before turning away without explanation, without farewell. "Lady Mariana," came a warm voice at her elbow. Lord Bramwell Ellingham bowed, his kind eyes meeting hers. "You look radiant this evening." "Lord Ellingham," she replied with a practiced smile. "How fortunate to find a friendly face amidst the season's most illustrious gathering." "I should think you would find many friendly faces here," he said. "You have been greatly missed these past seasons." "I find that difficult to believe," she replied. "London has such a talent for forgetting." Bram's brow furrowed. "Not everyone forgets, my lady." Before she could respond, a hush fell over the assembly, spreading like ripples in still water. The music faltered, then ceased entirely. Mariana felt it, that peculiar pressure in the air that heralded something momentous, something that would alter the carefully constructed peace she had built since her heartbreak. "What is it?" she asked, though she already knew. Her heart recognized him before her eyes found him. The doors had opened. He stood framed there, taller than she remembered, his broad shoulders set against the gilded frame. The Duke of Valehart had returned to London society. Adrian's face was leaner, marked by lines that had not been there before. His raven hair bore a streak of silver at the temple that made him appear both distinguished and somehow wounded. The silence deepened as he stepped forward, his gaze sweeping the room with aristocratic detachment until, inevitably, it found her. 2 years dissolved in an instant. The ballroom blurred around them as their eyes met across the crowded space. Mariana could not breathe, could not move. The madre-pearl bracelet turned cold against her wrist. "My God," Bram whispered, "he has returned." The Duke's expression changed so subtly that perhaps only Mariana could read it, a flicker of recognition, of pain, of longing so profound it seemed to reach across the room and touch her physically. Whispers erupted anew, the tension in the air so thick one might cut it with a blade. Mariana forced herself to breathe, her fingers pressing so hard against the bracelet that it would surely leave marks upon her skin. "Lady Mariana," Bram said gently, "perhaps we might step onto the terrace for a moment." "No," she replied, her voice surprisingly steady. "I shall not flee. I have done nothing that requires my retreat." Lady Verena Crestwick, resplendent in crimson silk, glided to the Duke's side, her pale hand coming to rest possessively upon his arm. Her smile was a knife, flashing in Mariana's direction. "How interesting," she purred, though few could hear her. "The prodigal Duke returns, and London holds its breath. One might think the world had stopped turning." Adrian's jaw tightened visibly, but he allowed Lady Crestwick to guide him further into the room. The orchestra, uncertain, began to play once more, though the notes seemed muted, as if sounding from a great distance. "Shall we dance, Lady Mariana?" Bram asked, his concern evident. "A waltz might clear the air." "Yes," she said, forcing herself to look away from Adrian. "A waltz would be most welcome." As Bram led her to the floor, she could feel Adrian's gaze following her, burning into her back like a brand. She straightened her spine, lifting her chin. She would not break again. Not here. Not before him. Not before all of London. "He watches you still," Bram murmured as they moved through the figures of the dance. "Let him watch," Mariana replied, though her heart pounded traitorously in her chest. "I have learned to live without his regard." But as the dance turned and she caught glimpse of Adrian's face once more, she wondered if that were truly so. The waltz concluded with a final flourish of strings, and Mariana curtsied to Lord Ellingham, grateful for the steadiness of his presence. As they moved from the dance floor, she felt rather than saw Adrian approaching, his path cutting through the crowd with inevitable precision. "Lady Mariana," came his voice, deeper than she remembered, tinged with a gravity that had not been there before. She turned, her composure a fragile shield. "Your Grace," she acknowledged, her curtsy measured and correct. Nothing more, nothing less than society demanded. "You look well," he said, his eyes searching her face. "Very well indeed." "Time passes," she replied. "We all change with its flow." "Some things remain constant," he countered, his gaze never leaving hers. Lord Ellingham cleared his throat. "Your Grace, welcome back to London. Your absence has been remarked upon." "I'm certain it has," Adrian replied, his attention still fixed upon Mariana. "Much has been said of me, I imagine, in the drawing-rooms and ballrooms of the ton." "Much has been said of many things," Mariana observed, her tone deliberately light. "Society thrives on conversation, after all." A muscle flexed in Adrian's jaw. "I had hoped, that is, I wonder if I might have a moment of your time, Lady Mariana. There are matters I would discuss with you." Before she could respond, Lady Crestwick appeared at his elbow like a crimson shadow. "Adrian, darling," she said, her voice honey over steel. "Lord Hatherton has been asking after you. Something about that business in Cornwall, I believe." The Duke's expression hardened momentarily. "Lord Hatherton can wait. But surely Lady Mariana would not wish to monopolize your attention on your first evening back in society," Lady Crestwick persisted, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "There are so many who wish to speak with you." "I assure you, Lady Crestwick, I have no intention of monopolizing His Grace's time," Mariana said, her voice cool as spring water. "Our acquaintance is of little consequence now." Pain flashed across Adrian's features, swift as lightning, gone almost before it could be recognized. "You undervalue yourself as always," he said quietly. "On the contrary," Mariana replied, "I have learned my value quite precisely these past 2 years." The barb struck home. She could see it in the tightening of his shoulders, the slight intake of breath. Lord Ellingham shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Perhaps we might seek refreshment, Lady Mariana," Bram suggested. "An excellent notion," she agreed, forcing brightness into her tone. "If you'll excuse us, Your Grace, Lady Crestwick." As they moved away, Mariana felt Adrian's gaze following her like a physical touch. She did not look back, though every fibre of her being yearned to do so. "He seems changed," Bram observed as they reached the refreshment tables. "Does he?" Mariana asked, accepting a glass of champagne with hands she willed not to tremble. "I confess, I did not notice." Bram's kind eyes held knowing. "You never were skilled at deception, my lady." "Then I have had ample time to practice the art," she replied, sipping the champagne. It tasted of nothing. Across the room she observed Adrian in conversation with several gentlemen, his posture rigid, his attention clearly elsewhere. Lady Crestwick remained at his side, a proprietary hand resting upon his sleeve. "They say she has set her cap for him," Bram said, following her gaze. "Lady Crestwick has been a widow these 3 years and seeks advancement. She would do well to look elsewhere," Mariana said. "The Duke is not easily led." "Unless his heart is engaged," Bram observed quietly. Mariana looked away. "His heart is his own concern, as is the direction of his affections." "Is it?" Bram asked. "I wonder." Before she could respond, a disturbance at the entrance to the ballroom drew their attention. A messenger had arrived, his attire suggesting urgency. He spoke briefly with a footman, who then approached the Duke with evident reluctance. Adrian excused himself from his conversation, moving to meet the messenger. A sealed note exchanged hands. As the Duke broke the seal and read the contents, his face drained of colour. Lady Crestwick leaned close, attempting to glimpse the message, but Adrian folded it away in a swift, decisive motion. His eyes sought and found Mariana across the room. Something in his gaze sent a chill down her spine. Not fear, precisely, but a premonition of change. "Something is amiss," Bram murmured. "It is none of our concern," Mariana replied, though the madrepearl bracelet had grown cold again upon her wrist. The Duke excused himself from Lady Crestwick with visible firmness and began moving through the crowd toward Mariana. His expression was grave, his purpose evident in every step. "He comes this way," Bram said unnecessarily. "Yes," Mariana breathed, setting down her champagne glass with a hand that had begun to tremble despite her best efforts. "So he does." "Lady Mariana." Adrian's voice was low, urgent, nothing like the carefully modulated tones he had employed earlier. "I must speak with you privately." She regarded him with outward calm that belied the tumult within. "I'm afraid that would be quite improper, Your Grace." "Propriety be damned," he said, then checked himself. "Forgive me. But this matter cannot wait, nor can it be discussed in open company." Lord Ellingham stepped forward. "Duke or not, sir, you forget yourself. Lady Mariana owes you no audience." Adrian's gaze never left Mariana's face. If she knew the matter at hand, she might think differently. Then enlighten us both, she challenged, aware that nearby conversations had quieted as the Tun's attention shifted toward their exchange. The Duke hesitated, tension evident in every line of his body. "It concerns your safety," he said finally, his voice barely audible, "and matters from the past that I had thought resolved." Mariana's pulse quickened. "My safety? Please," he said, and there was something in his voice, a vulnerability, a desperation, that she had never heard before. 5 minutes, no more. She should refuse. Prudence, pride, self-preservation, all demanded she turn away. Yet the urgency in his eyes spoke of something beyond their personal history. "Very well," she relented. "The small anteroom, perhaps. Lord Ellingham will wait outside." Bram looked as though he might object, but nodded. "Of course." As they moved toward the anteroom, Lady Crestwick intercepted their path, her smile brittle as thin ice. "Adrian, darling, you're not abandoning our party so soon? Lady Hatherton was just asking after you." "This is a matter of some urgency, Verena," he replied, his tone brooking no argument. The widow's pale eyes narrowed as they flicked to Mariana. "I see. Urgent matters with former acquaintances. How fascinating." "Lady Crestwick," Mariana said, her voice steady despite the insult, "sometimes the past returns to us not by choice, but by necessity. I'm certain a woman of your experience understands this perfectly." A flush stained Verena's cheeks. "Mind your step, my dear. The fall from grace is swift, and the landing most unpleasant." "I have already fallen," Mariana replied with quiet dignity. "I found the landing educational." Adrian's lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile, before his expression turned grave once more. He guided Mariana toward the anteroom, with Lord Ellingham following at a discreet distance. Once inside, with Bram stationed outside the door, which remained properly ajar, Adrian wasted no time. "Someone is using your name," he said without preamble, "to threaten me, to manipulate certain matters of significant importance." Mariana blinked in surprise. "My name? Whatever for? I am of little consequence in such circles." "You are of consequence to me," he said simply, "which makes you valuable to my enemies." The admission hung in the air between them, weighted with implications neither dared address directly. "What enemies are these?" she asked instead, "and what connection could they possibly draw between us after so long apart?" Adrian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "2 years ago I left England to address a matter of grave importance, a conspiracy that threatened not only my holdings, but several interests vital to the crown." "You left without a word," she said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. "Without explanation." "I left to protect you," he replied, his eyes meeting hers directly. "They threatened you specifically, Mariana, said they would destroy you if I remained at your side." She stared at him, disbelief warring with a desperate hope that there might be some explanation for the pain he had caused. "Who threatened me? And why would you not tell me this?" "The less you knew, the safer you were," he said. "Or so I believed at the time. I thought by removing myself from your life, by allowing society to believe I had simply abandoned you, you would be beneath their notice." "Beneath their notice," she repeated, the words bitter on her tongue. "Do you have any conception of what I endured after you left? The whispers, the pitying glances, the humiliation." "I can imagine," he said quietly, "and I have hated myself for it every day since." The bracelet at her wrist seemed to pulse with cold energy. "Why return now? Why speak of this after 2 years of silence?" "Because they have made another move," he said, gesturing to the folded note in his hand. "And this time they mention you by name. They know I have returned to London. They know I still—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "They know you still matter to me." Mariana's breath caught. "What precisely does that note say, Your Grace?" "It says that unless I withdraw support for a certain bill before Parliament, they will ensure that Lady Mariana Lorne suffers a scandal from which she shall never recover." His voice hardened. "And they are here tonight, watching us, even now." She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. "Here? In this very ballroom?" "Yes," he said grimly. "I believe so, which is why I must ask something unconscionable of you, after all I have done." "What would you ask of me?" she said, wariness evident in her tone. "Allow me to publicly renew our acquaintance," he said. "Let me stay close enough to protect you, to discover who among the Tun serves as their agent." Mariana's laugh held no humor. "You wish to use me as bait, Your Grace?" "I wish to keep you safe," he corrected, his voice fervent, "and to make amends if such a thing is possible." Before she could respond, Lord Ellingham's voice came from the doorway. "Lady Mariana, forgive me, but Lady Arbrook is asking for you. Something about the next dance set." "Thank you, Lord Ellingham," she called back. To Adrian she added softly, "I shall consider your request, Your Grace, but do not mistake consideration for forgiveness." "I would never presume so much," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "But know this, Mariana, I never stopped caring for you, not for one moment of these past 2 years." As she turned to leave, her heart hammering in her chest, she paused. "The bill you mentioned, what is its nature?" "It would protect those who cannot protect themselves," he said. "Children in factories, women in workhouses, those society finds easiest to forget." Something shifted in her expression. "I shall see you at dinner, Your Grace," she said quietly. "Perhaps we might continue our discussion then." As they returned to the ballroom, the eyes of the ton upon them, Mariana was acutely aware of Adrian's presence at her side. The silence that had greeted his arrival had transformed into a buzz of speculation, a wave of whispers that followed in their wake. And somewhere among the elegant smiling faces surrounding them lurked an enemy prepared to destroy what remained of her reputation, all to manipulate the man who had once broken her heart. The dinner portion of the evening found Mariana seated, by some machination of fate or the Countess's deliberate arrangement, between Lord Ellingham and the Duke of Valehart. Lady Crestwick, several places down, observed them with thinly veiled displeasure, her dark fan snapping open and closed with agitated precision. "I confess I find the seating arrangement curious," Mariana murmured as servants presented the first course. "Lady Arbrook typically arranges her guests with far more conventional sensibilities. Perhaps she senses a story worth telling," Bram replied quietly. "Or perhaps," Adrian added in low tones, leaning slightly toward her, "she has been encouraged to facilitate our conversation by parties with particular interest in the matter." Mariana's gloved hand paused midway to her wineglass. "You suspect our hostess?" "I suspect everyone," he replied, his gaze sweeping the elegant diners surrounding them. "And you should do the same." "A tiresome way to live," she observed. "Indeed," he agreed, something softening in his expression. "It has been wearing." The way he said it, the weariness evident in his voice, gave her pause. For the first time she truly looked at him, noting the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the taut set of his shoulders beneath impeccable evening attire. Whatever battles he had fought during their separation, they had not been without cost. "The bill you mentioned," she said, deliberately changing the subject. "When does it come before Parliament?" 3 days hence," he replied. "It has powerful opposition." "From those who profit from suffering," Bram interjected quietly. Adrian nodded. "Factory owners primarily, men who view children as nothing more than small hands to operate dangerous machinery at a fraction of adult wages." "And these are the people threatening me?" Mariana asked, a chill running through her despite the warmth of the dining room. "They're agents, more likely," Adrian replied. "Men who operate in shadow, who consider threats and coercion merely tools of business. Yet you stand against them," she observed, despite the personal cost. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she had acknowledged the sacrifice. Some principles cannot be compromised, regardless of consequence. The conversation paused as footmen served the next course. Mariana was acutely aware of Adrian beside her, of the familiar scent of cedar and bergamot that she had once associated with happiness. "Lord Ellingham," came Lady Crestwick's voice from down the table, pitched to carry just far enough, "I understand you recently acquired a property in Derbyshire. How fortunate for you to secure such a modest estate." The emphasis on modest was slight but unmistakable. Bram merely smiled. "Indeed, Lady Crestwick, I find that true contentment often thrives in modest surroundings, provided the company is sincere." Verena's smile tightened. How charmingly provincial. "The Duke, of course, maintains several grand estates. Valehart is particularly magnificent, is it not, Adrian?" "I have not visited Valehart in some time," he replied coolly. "I find London demands my full attention at present." "Such dedication to duty," Verena persisted, "though surely a man of your position must consider the continuation of his line. The right Duchess could provide such comfort after your parliamentary labours." Mariana felt Adrian tense beside her. "When I seek a Duchess, Lady Crestwick," he said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by those nearby, "I shall look for qualities beyond comfort or convenience." "What qualities would you seek, Your Grace?" asked Lady Pennington, an elderly dowager seated opposite them, her eyes bright with interest. Adrian hesitated only a moment. "Courage," he said finally. intelligence, compassion, and a heart strong enough to endure difficulties without becoming hardened by them. His gaze slid briefly to Mariana, then away. She felt heat rise in her cheeks and fixed her attention resolutely on her plate. "Admirable qualities indeed," Lady Pennington observed with a knowing smile, "though I dare say such a paragon would be difficult to find." "On the contrary," Bram said lightly, "I believe such women exist, though perhaps they are not always recognized for their worth." "Or perhaps," Lady Crestwick interjected, "they are recognized, found wanting, and properly set aside." The barb struck with precision. Mariana's fingers tightened around her fork, but her expression remained composed. "How fortunate, then," she replied, her voice steady. "That time and experience often reveal true character, allowing for more accurate assessment upon second consideration." A ripple of suppressed reaction traveled the length of the table. Adrian's lips quirked in what might almost have been a smile. "How boldly spoken," Verena replied, her tone venomous beneath its honey coating, "though I wonder if one's reputation can withstand repeated assessment." "Lady Crestwick," Adrian interrupted, his tone brooking no argument, "I believe Lady Arbrook was just remarking on your exquisite necklace. Perhaps you might enlighten us as to its provenance?" The diversion succeeded in redirecting conversation, though Verena's eyes promised future retribution. As dinner proceeded through its remaining courses, Mariana became increasingly aware of being observed, not merely by those at the table, but by someone with darker intent. "She is not the threat," Adrian murmured, so quietly that only Mariana could hear. "Merely a distraction." "A most effective one," Mariana replied under her breath. "Watch for the quiet observers," he continued, appearing to focus on his dessert. "Those who say little, who study rather than participate." She nodded almost imperceptibly, her gaze drifting casually around the table, noting those who seemed most attentive to their exchange. Nothing struck her as immediately suspicious, yet the sensation of being watched persisted. As dinner concluded and the party prepared to return to the ballroom for dancing, Adrian leaned close once more. "The first waltz," he said softly. "Will you grant it to me?" The request, so ordinary in its phrasing, so extraordinary in its implications, caught her off guard. "Would that be wise?" she asked. "Not in the slightest," he admitted. "But it would allow me to remain close, to better observe those who observe us, and to give our audience exactly what they anticipate," she added. His expression grew serious. "I would not use you so, Mariana. If you find the prospect too distasteful—" "I shall dance with you, Your Grace," she interrupted, "but do not mistake practicality for forgiveness." "I understand," he replied, though something in his eyes suggested otherwise. A hope, perhaps, that she was not yet ready to acknowledge, much less encourage. As they rose from the table, Mariana caught Lady Crestwick's venomous glare and Sir Ardent Crowell's calculating gaze from across the room. The evening, she realized, had only begun to reveal its dangers. The orchestra had already begun to play as the dinner guests filtered back into the ballroom. Mariana felt the weight of expectation in the air, the collective anticipation of the ton as she entered on Lord Ellingham's arm, the Duke following at a proper distance. "He means to claim the first waltz," Bram observed quietly. "The entire room awaits the spectacle." "Then we shall give them one," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest, "though perhaps not the one they expect." Bram's eyes searched her face. "Be careful, Mariana. The Duke may have honorable intentions regarding your safety, but the heart is not so easily governed by reason." "My heart is quite thoroughly governed, I assure you," she said, though the Madry pearl bracelet seemed to pulse against her wrist, as if in contradiction. Lady Crestwick swept past them, her crimson skirts brushing against Mariana's pale gown with deliberate force. "How quaint," she murmured. "The Forsaken returns to the flame. One wonders if she will burn twice as brightly this time." Before Mariana could respond, the Countess of Arbrook approached, her silver-streaked dark hair arranged beneath an impressive diamond tiara. "Lady Mariana, how delightful to see you again in society, and in such interesting company." "Your hospitality is most appreciated, Lady Arbrook," Mariana replied with a graceful curtsy. "The evening has been most illuminating." "Indeed," the Countess said, her shrewd eyes missing nothing. "I understand the Duke has requested the first waltz. Quite the gesture after such a prolonged absence." Mariana maintained her composed smile. "Society thrives on renewal, does it not?" "And on observation," the Countess agreed with a knowing glance. "The ton has a prodigious memory for dramatic returns." As the Countess moved on to greet other guests, Mariana noted Adrian approaching, his expression determined. The orchestra had begun the opening strains of a waltz, and conversations throughout the ballroom quieted in anticipation. "Lady Mariana," he said, bowing formally before her, "if I might claim the honor of this dance." The moment hung suspended between them, weighted with history, and watched by what felt like every eye in London. Mariana curtsied, extending her hand. "You may, Your Grace." As his gloved fingers closed around hers, she felt a jolt of awareness that no amount of practiced indifference could suppress. He led her to the center of the floor, where they stood alone for one breathless moment before he placed his hand at her waist and began to guide her through the opening measures of the waltz. "They are watching," he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. "They always watch," she replied. "It is London's primary occupation, not the ton," he clarified, subtly directing their movements to afford him a better view of the room. "Our particular observer. Near the eastern archway, Sir Ardent Crowell. He has not taken his eyes from us since we began." Mariana allowed herself a brief glance in the indicated direction. The gentleman in question stood partially concealed by a marble column, his attention indeed fixed upon them with an intensity that seemed beyond mere social interest. "I know him only by reputation," she said quietly as they turned through the waltz. "A banker, I believe." "Among other things," Adrian replied. "His financial enterprises extend into shipping, manufacturing, and certain less savory ventures. He stands to lose considerably should the protection bill pass. And you believe he's behind the threats?" "He represents interests that would benefit from my compliance," Adrian said carefully. "Whether he acts on his own initiative or at the behest of others remains to be seen." The music swelled around them, and despite the gravity of their conversation, Mariana could not help but respond to the familiar sensation of dancing in Adrian's arms. They had always moved well together, anticipating each other's steps with uncanny precision. That, at least, had not changed. "You dance as beautifully as ever," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Practice," she replied. "Lord Ellingham has been a dedicated partner these past seasons." Something like pain flickered across his features. "I am glad you were not entirely alone." "I was entirely alone," she corrected, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Surrounded by people, but alone nonetheless." His hand tightened almost imperceptibly at her waist. "I never meant to cause you such pain, Mariana." "Yet you did," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "With full knowledge of what your departure would mean for me in society." "I believed the alternative would bring you greater harm," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I still wake in the night, haunted by the choice I made." The raw honesty in his tone caught her off guard. Before she could respond, she noticed Sir Ardent moving along the periphery of the ballroom, his path bringing him closer to where they danced. "He approaches," she murmured, returning her attention to their conversation. Adrian nodded slightly. "Speak of inconsequential matters. Let him believe we are engaged in reconciliation." "Is that not precisely what we wish him to believe?" she asked. "That I might serve as leverage against you once more?" "I wish him to believe I care for you," Adrian replied, his eyes intent upon hers, "which requires no deception whatsoever." The admission hung between them, too direct to ignore, too profound to acknowledge. Mariana felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You speak carelessly, Your Grace." "On the contrary," he said, "I speak with greater care than I have ever exercised. These past 2 years have taught me the cost of silence and misdirection." The waltz began its final measures, and Mariana was acutely conscious of Sir Ardent's proximity, of the attention focused upon them from all corners of the room, and most of all, of Adrian's unwavering gaze. "The music ends," she said softly, "and with it, this conversation." "For now," he agreed. "But our story does not, Mariana. It never truly did." As the final notes of the waltz faded, he bowed over her hand, his lips brushing her gloved knuckles with such delicate pressure that she might have imagined it. The gesture, intimate yet proper, sent whispers rippling through the watching crowd. When she looked up, she found Sir Ardent watching them with narrowed eyes, his expression calculating. Beside him stood Lady Crestwick, her pale face flushed with anger. Beyond them both, half concealed in shadow, another figure observed, a man she did not recognize, whose attentive stillness marked him as more than a casual onlooker. "There are more players in this game than we realized," she murmured to Adrian as he escorted her from the dance floor. "Indeed," he replied grimly, "and the stakes grow higher with every passing moment." Following the waltz, Mariana retreated to a relatively quiet alcove with Lord Ellingham. grateful for his steadfast presence amidst the swirling currents of intrigue and emotion that threatened to overwhelm her composure. "You appear troubled," Bram observed, handing her a glass of champagne. "Did His Grace speak inappropriately?" "No," she admitted, sipping the cool, effervescent liquid. "If anything, he was distressingly sincere." Bram's expression softened. "You still care for him." It wasn't a question, and Mariana did not dignify it with a denial. "Caring and trusting are not the same, Lord Ellingham." "Indeed not," he agreed, "though one often leads to the other, given sufficient cause." "And what cause has he given me?" she asked, her voice low to avoid being overheard. "Cryptic warnings? Vague explanations for a betrayal that left me socially devastated?" "Perhaps the truth," Bram suggested gently. "His concern appears genuine, Mariana. Whatever his past failings, I do not believe he means you harm now." Before she could respond, they were interrupted by the approach of Sir Ardent Crowell, his thin lips curved in what might charitably be called a smile. "Lady Mariana," he said, bowing with precise correctness, "how delightful to see you in such spirits this evening. Your dance with the Duke was most evocative." "Sir Ardent," she acknowledged with a cool nod. "I'm afraid I don't recall making your acquaintance previously." "An oversight I'm pleased to remedy," he replied smoothly. "I have long admired your resilience in the face of society's fluctuating regard. The barb was delivered with such polished civility that one might almost miss its sting." Mariana's smile remained fixed. "How kind of you to notice, though I find society's regard rather like the weather, variable, often unpleasant, and entirely beyond my control." Sir Ardent's eyes narrowed slightly. "A philosophical perspective. Though I wonder if the Duke shares your equanimity regarding public opinion." "His Grace's perspectives are his own affair," she replied. "I wouldn't presume to speak for him." "Yet you dance with him," Sir Ardent observed. "After such a noteworthy separation, some might find that intriguing." "Some might find it none of their concern," Lord Ellingham interjected, his normally genial expression hardening. Sir Ardent merely smiled. "Forgive me, Lord Ellingham. I meant no offence. Merely observing that the Duke's recent political activities have drawn considerable attention. One wonders if his personal reconciliations might signal shifts in his professional positions as well." The implication was clear enough. Mariana met his gaze directly. "If you have questions regarding the Duke's political standings, Sir Ardent, I suggest you address them to him directly." "Oh, but I find indirect approaches so much more illuminating," he replied, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. "For instance, your renewed connection with His Grace might suggest a certain flexibility in his principles that was not previously evident." "You mistake courtesy for connection, sir," she replied, though she knew the lie was transparent. The entire ballroom had witnessed the charged atmosphere of their waltz. "Perhaps," he conceded with obvious insincerity, "though I wonder what the Duke might sacrifice to protect such courtesy should it be threatened." The threat, for all its oblique delivery, struck Mariana like a physical blow. She maintained her composure through sheer force of will. "Are you threatening me, Sir Ardent?" "My dear Lady Mariana," he replied, affecting shock, "I merely speculate on the curious workings of influence and attachment, nothing more." Lord Ellingham stepped forward. "I believe Lady Mariana requires refreshment, Sir Ardent, if you'll excuse us." As Bram guided her away, Mariana caught sight of Adrian across the room, deep in conversation with several gentlemen she recognized as members of Parliament. His gaze occasionally drifted to her, vigilant despite his apparent engagement elsewhere. "He all but confirmed his involvement," she murmured to Bram, though he was careful to avoid explicit threats. "Men like Crowell seldom speak directly," Bram replied, his expression grim. "Their power lies in suggestion and implication." They had scarcely reached a quieter corner when Lady Crestwick intercepted them, her smile brittle as spun sugar. "Lady Mariana, how you dominate the conversation this evening. First the Duke, now Sir Ardent. One might almost think you calculated such prominence." "I assure you, Lady Crestwick, any prominence I've achieved this evening has been entirely unsought," Mariana replied wearily. "Indeed?" Verena arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "How curious, then, that you should capture such devoted attention after so long in society's shadows. One wonders what secrets you possess to effect such a dramatic reversal of fortune." "Perhaps merely the absence of artifice," Mariana suggested. "Some gentlemen find honesty refreshing amid so much performance." Lady Crestwick's eyes flashed. "Be careful, my dear. Second chances are rare in our circle. Squander this one and you may find yourself permanently relegated to the periphery." I have survived the periphery once, Mariana replied steadily. I discovered it offers a remarkably clear perspective on the center. Before Verena could respond, a footman approached with a silver salver bearing a folded note. For Lady Mariana Lorne, he announced. Mariana accepted the note with a curious frown. Breaking the plain seal, she unfolded it to reveal a message written in a hand she did not recognize. Your renewed association endangers more than reputation. The Duke's political ambitions will cost him dearly. Unless you persuade him to reconsider his position, a wise woman would distance herself immediately. A foolish one will find her past examined most thoroughly. She felt the blood drain from her face. Lord Ellingham, noting her distress, moved closer. Mariana, what is it? She handed him the note wordlessly. As he read it, his expression darkened. Who delivered this? He demanded of the footman. I'm not certain, my lord, the servant replied. It was handed to me with instructions to deliver it to Lady Mariana immediately. Across the room, Mariana's eyes met Adrian's. Something in her expression must have alerted him, for he immediately excused himself from his companions and began making his way toward her. I should show him this, she said, reclaiming the note from Bram's hand. Indeed, he agreed, though I wonder if it might be wiser to leave now before matters escalate further. Mariana shook her head. Running would solve nothing. If they threatened me when I had no connection to the Duke, they will scarcely hesitate now that they believe I might influence him. Lady Crestwick, who had observed the exchange with evident curiosity, stepped closer. Troubling correspondence, Lady Mariana. How dramatic. No more dramatic than your persistent interest in my affairs, Lady Crestwick, Mariana replied, her patience wearing thin. One might almost think you harbored some personal investment in them. Verena's smile tightened. Merely the natural concern one feels when witnessing a potential repetition of past misfortunes. Your concern is noted, Mariana said coolly, and entirely unnecessary. As Adrian reached them, his expression grave, Mariana felt the weight of decision upon her shoulders. The note represented more than a threat. It was a test of her courage, her principles, and most dangerously, her heart. Your Grace, she said, meeting his concerned gaze, I believe we have matters to discuss. Matters of some urgency. Adrian led Mariana to a small antechamber adjoining the ballroom, Lord Ellingham following at a discreet distance to stand guard near the open doorway. The Duke's expression remained impassive, though tension radiated from his tall frame as he examined the threatening note. This is bolder than their previous communications, he said quietly, his eyes scanning the brief message once more. They typically prefer subtlety to direct threats. Perhaps they grow impatient, Mariana suggested. The bill comes before Parliament in mere days. Yes. He folded the note carefully, tucking it into his waistcoat pocket. But there is something else at work here. This hasty escalation suggests desperation rather than confidence. Regardless of their emotional state, she replied, the threat remains. They mean to use me against you, just as you feared. Adrian's gaze softened as he looked at her. I am sorry, Mariana. Had I known my return would place you in such immediate danger, you would have what? She interrupted. Remained away forever? Abandoned your principles along with me? I would have better prepared to protect you, he said firmly. Made arrangements to ensure your safety before appearing publicly. Mariana absently touched the madripearl bracelet at her wrist. I am not entirely defenseless, Your Grace. 2 years of navigating society's judgment have taught me considerable resilience. Resilience will not shield you from the kind of scandal they can manufacture, he said grimly. These men have resources, connections. They can fabricate evidence, bribe servants for false testimony. They can destroy reputations with ruthless efficiency. What would you have me do? She asked. Hide away? Publicly repudiate you? Leave London altogether? Yes, he said so quickly that she blinked in surprise. If it would keep you safe, yes. All of those things and more. And the bill? Your principles? The vulnerable people who depend on its passage. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, the gesture betraying his internal conflict. The bill matters. Of course it matters. But not at the cost of your safety, your reputation. My reputation, Mariana said quietly, has already weathered the worst society can inflict. When you left 2 years ago, I endured whispers, snubs, pitying glances. I survived. I rebuilt my place in society through dignity and perseverance. And now I have endangered that hard-won peace, he said, self-recrimination evident in his tone. She shook her head. No, these men who would exploit children, who would threaten a woman to manipulate a man's vote, they are the ones responsible, not you. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a softening, a wondering. "You have changed, Mariana. Circumstances changed me," she replied simply. "For the better, I think," he said, his voice gentle, "though I would give anything to have spared you the pain that forged such strength." The moment hung between them, weighted with unspoken regrets and possibilities. Mariana was the first to look away, conscious of their surroundings, of the watchful eyes that might observe even this private exchange. "What shall we do about this?" she asked, gesturing toward his pocket where the note rested. Adrian's expression hardened. "First, we identify the sender. Sir Ardent is the most obvious suspect, but he rarely acts alone. There will be others involved, possibly even someone you would not suspect." "Lady Crestwick," Mariana suggested. "Perhaps," he allowed, "though I think her interest in me stems more from ambition than conspiracy. Still, she cannot be dismissed entirely. And once we identify them, what then?" "Then," Adrian said, his voice taking on a steely quality she had never heard before, "I shall ensure they understand the consequences of threatening what I value." The possessive implications of his statement sent an unwelcome warmth through Mariana's chest. "I am not yours to defend, Your Grace," she reminded him gently. "That right was forfeited 2 years ago." Pain flickered across his features. The right, perhaps, but not the desire to do so, nor the ability. Before she could respond, a soft knock at the doorframe drew their attention. Lord Ellingham stood there, his expression apologetic. "Forgive the interruption, but Lady Arbrook is asking for Lady Mariana. The Countess is organizing tableaux vivants, and apparently your participation is essential." Mariana nodded. "Of course, I shall join her directly." As Bram stepped away to give them a final moment of privacy, Adrian moved closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Promise me you'll be cautious. Watch what you eat and drink. Accept no messages or packages without inspection. Trust no one you do not know absolutely." "You paint a frightening picture," she observed. "These are frightening people," he replied, "and you are precious to them only as a means of controlling me. And what am I to you?" The question escaped before she could reconsider its wisdom. Adrian's gaze held hers, unflinching. "Everything you have always been, Mariana. The better part of my soul." The raw honesty in his voice left her momentarily speechless. He continued before she could gather her thoughts. "I do not ask forgiveness," he said quietly. "I ask only that you allow me to protect you now, as I failed to do before." "I shall be careful," she promised. "But I will not hide, Adrian. Not again." His name on her lips, the first time she had spoken it since his return, seemed to strike him physically. He drew a sharp breath, then nodded once. "Then we face this together," he said, "as we should have faced everything." She moved toward the door, pausing briefly to look back at him. "For now, we face a tableau vivant, significantly less dangerous, though perhaps equally dramatic." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I shall watch from a safe distance, both for your protection and my sanity." As Mariana rejoined the gathering, she was acutely aware of shifting alliances and hidden threats surrounding her. Sir Ardent observed her from across the room, his gaze calculating. Lady Crestwick hovered near a cluster of influential dowagers, her animated conversation punctuated by glances in Mariana's direction. And somewhere, perhaps, lurked others whose intentions remained concealed behind polite smiles and proper manners. Yet, for the first time in 2 years, Mariana felt something beyond mere survival, a spark of defiance, of purpose. Whatever came next, she would face it with her dignity intact and her eyes wide open. The tableau vivant unfolded in Lady Arbrook's grand salon, where gilded screens and artfully arranged furniture created a theatrical space. Mariana found herself cast as Hope in a classical arrangement, draped in pale blue silk, with a single lamp held aloft. The symbolism was not lost on her, nor on the murmuring audience as she held her pose with perfect stillness. Across the room she could see Adrian watching, his expression a careful mask that revealed nothing of their earlier conversation. Beside him stood several members of Parliament, their attention divided between the artistic display and their own hushed discussions. When the tableau concluded and the audience applauded politely, Mariana stepped down from the raised platform, accepting a glass of water from a footman. As she sipped it, she became aware of Sir Ardent approaching, his thin smile fixed in place. "A most affecting portrayal, Lady Mariana," he said. "Hope illuminating darkness. How appropriate." "Thank you, Sir Ardent," she replied, maintaining her composure despite the chill his presence evoked. "Though I suspect the Countess selected the roles with aesthetic rather than metaphorical considerations." "Perhaps," he conceded, though coincidences often reveal underlying truths. Speaking of which, I could not help but notice your extended conversation with the Duke earlier. I trust it was illuminating. His Grace and I discussed matters of mutual acquaintance, she replied smoothly. Nothing that would interest you, I'm certain. Sir Ardent's smile tightened. On the contrary, Lady Mariana, the Duke's interests have become something of a specialty of mine, particularly his more personal attachments. How tedious for you, she observed, meeting his gaze directly, to concern yourself with another's private affairs. Not tedious at all, when those affairs might influence matters of significant consequence. He leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping. The Duke stands at a crossroads, Lady Mariana. His decision affects many beyond himself, including potentially you. I have weathered difficult seasons before, Sir Ardent, she replied, her voice steady. I find that principles once compromised are far harder to recover than social standing. His eyes narrowed. A philosophical perspective. I wonder if you would maintain it when faced with true scandal rather than mere gossip. Are you threatening me, sir? She asked quietly. Merely observing that reputation is fragile, he replied, and that the tongue has a voracious appetite for scandal, particularly when it involves impropriety between unmarried parties. Understanding dawned. You would fabricate evidence of misconduct. I would do nothing, he said with false innocence, but there are always those willing to swear they observed indiscretions, given proper motivation. A lady's maid, perhaps, or a footman. Their testimony before the right ears would be devastating. Mariana's heart pounded, but she maintained her outward calm. Such testimony would be false. Truth and falsehood matter less than perception, Sir Ardent replied, as I believe you discovered 2 years ago, when the Duke's abrupt departure left you subject to society's judgment. And yet I survived, she said, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. I would survive again. Perhaps, he acknowledged. But would the Duke's bill survive? Would the children in those factories fare better because you maintained your principles? The question struck her with unexpected force. Before she could formulate a response, Lord Ellingham appeared at her side, his expression pleasant but his eyes watchful. Lady Mariana, I believe Lady Pennington was hoping to speak with you about her charity endeavours, he said smoothly. If you'll excuse us, Sir Ardent. The banker inclined his head with calculated deference. Of course. We shall continue our discussion another time, Lady Mariana. As Bram guided her away, Mariana fought to maintain her composure. He all but admitted they would fabricate evidence of impropriety, she murmured. Despicable but not surprising, Bram replied, his voice equally low. Men like Crowell consider such tactics merely tools of negotiation. He suggested that my insistence on principle would harm those the bill is meant to protect, she said, troubled by the implication, as if my reputation were being weighed against children's welfare. A false choice, Bram said firmly. The Duke's resolve does not depend on your capitulation to threats. If anything, such tactics will only strengthen his determination. Across the room, Mariana saw Adrian in conversation with Lady Crestwick, whose animated gestures suggested an argument barely contained by social propriety. His expression remained impassive, though tension was evident in the set of his shoulders. I wonder what she wants from him, Mariana mused. The usual, I expect, Bram replied. Status, wealth, connection to power, though she seems particularly determined in his case. As they watched, Lady Crestwick placed a possessive hand on Adrian's arm, leaning close to speak directly into his ear. His response, though inaudible at this distance, caused her to step back, her expression briefly revealing naked fury before she composed herself. Not a happy exchange, Bram observed. No, Mariana agreed, though I suspect the Duke is accustomed to managing unwanted attentions, some more than others, came a voice from behind them. Mariana turned to find Lady Pennington regarding her with shrewd eyes, her wrinkled face arranged in an expression of benign interest. The elderly dowager had been a fixture in society for decades, her sharp wit and sharper observation making her both respected and feared. Lady Pennington, Mariana acknowledged with a curtsy, I understand you wish to speak with me regarding charitable matters? A convenient fiction, the older woman replied with a dismissive wave. Though charity is indeed on my mind, specifically the charity one might extend to a gentleman who has made grievous errors in judgment. Mariana blinked in surprise at the directness. I'm afraid I don't quite follow, my lady. Lady Pennington snorted delicately. Come now, child. The entire room has observed the Duke's return and his evident desire for reconciliation. The question that occupies the ton is whether you will grant it. The Duke and I have merely renewed an acquaintance, Mariana replied carefully. Nothing more. Nonsense, Lady Pennington said firmly. I have observed society for 60 seasons, my dear. I know the difference between acquaintance and attachment. The question is whether his explanation for his past behavior merits forgiveness. Mariana hesitated, uncertain how to respond without revealing too much. Lord Ellingham stepped in smoothly. I believe that remains a private matter between the parties concerned, Lady Pennington, he suggested. The Dowager fixed him with a sharp gaze. Very gallant, Lord Ellingham, though I wonder if your own interest in Lady Mariana might colour your perspective on the Duke's suit. Bram flushed slightly. My interest is in Lady Mariana's happiness and well-being, nothing more. A noble sentiment, Lady Pennington observed, though perhaps not entirely accurate. Before the uncomfortable conversation could continue, a commotion near the entrance to the salon drew their attention. A footman had entered, bearing an envelope on a silver salver. He approached the Countess of Arbrook, speaking in urgent tones too low to be overheard. The Countess's expression shifted from irritation to concern. She nodded once, then moved to address her guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I must beg your indulgence for a brief interruption. It seems there has been some disturbance in the kitchens. Nothing serious, I assure you, but requiring my attention. Please continue to enjoy the refreshments and music. I shall return shortly. As she departed, murmurs rippled through the gathering. Mariana noticed Sir Ardent and several other gentlemen exchange significant glances. Across the room, Adrian had straightened, his attention focused on the departing Countess with evident suspicion. Something is amiss, Lord Ellingham murmured. Indeed, Lady Pennington agreed, her rheumy eyes sharp with interest. And I suspect it involves our Duke and his political endeavours. Before Mariana could respond, Adrian was making his way toward them, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes conveyed urgency. Lady Mariana, he said, bowing formally, might I trouble you for a brief word? A matter concerning mutual acquaintances has arisen. Of course, Your Grace, she replied, recognizing the pretext for what it was. Lady Pennington observed them with undisguised curiosity. Do not keep her over long, Duke. The tableau vivants will resume shortly, and Lady Mariana's hope was most affecting. I shall be brief, he promised, offering Mariana his arm. As she placed her hand upon it, she felt the tension in his muscles, the barely contained energy that suggested significant developments. Whatever had occurred, it had altered the landscape of their precarious situation, and as they moved toward a quieter corner of the salon, Mariana was acutely aware of Sir Ardent's calculating gaze following their progress, his thin lips curved in a smile that chilled her to the bone. There has been a development, Adrian said without preamble once they reached a relatively private alcove. My man observed Sir Ardent's footman delivering a message to the service entrance. Immediately afterward, the Countess was summoned from the gathering. You believe the message concerned us? Mariana asked, keeping her voice low. I believe it concerned you specifically, he replied grimly. My sources within the household staff report that a young woman has arrived at the servants' entrance, claiming to have damaging information regarding a lady present at tonight's gathering. Mariana felt the blood drain from her face. The fabricated scandal begins already. So it would seem, Adrian agreed, though they move with unexpected haste, which may prove to their disadvantage. How so? Hasty plans reveal seams, he explained, inconsistencies that might be detected and exploited. Had they taken more time, their false witness might have been better prepared, their evidence more convincingly constructed. Small comfort if the damage is already done, Mariana observed. Adrian's expression softened. I will not allow them to harm you, Mariana. Not again. Your protection, however well-intentioned, cannot silence wagging tongues, she replied. Once the accusation is made, truth becomes secondary to sensation. Unless the accusation itself is discredited before it can take root, he countered. Lord Ellingham has gone to make inquiries among the staff. With luck, we may intercept this scheme before it unfolds fully. Mariana touched the madrepearl bracelet unconsciously, drawing strength from its smooth surface. What would you have me do? For now, remain visible. Engage in conversation. Participate in the gathering as if nothing were amiss. His gaze was steady, reassuring despite the gravity of the situation. Should the Countess return and request your presence privately, decline politely but firmly. Insist that any matter requiring discussion be addressed in the presence of others. You believe Lady Arbrook complicit in this scheme? Mariana asked, surprised. Not necessarily, Adrian replied. She may simply be the unwitting instrument of Sir Ardent's machinations, but until we know for certain, caution is advisable. Mariana nodded, squaring her shoulders beneath the delicate fabric of her gown. Very well, I shall play my part in this particular tableau. Thank you, he said softly. Your courage humbles me, Mariana. Not courage, she corrected. Merely the determination not to be made a victim twice. As they prepared to rejoin the gathering, Lady Crestwick approached, her crimson skirts rustling with barely suppressed agitation. How cosy, she observed, her voice sharp despite its low volume. One might almost believe the past 2 years never occurred. Lady Crestwick, Adrian acknowledged coolly, I trust you are enjoying the evening's entertainments. Some more than others, she replied, her gaze sliding to Mariana with undisguised hostility. Though I find the Countess's absence curious, perhaps there is some domestic crisis requiring attention. The emphasis she placed on domestic crisis raised Mariana's suspicions immediately. You seem remarkably well informed about matters below stairs, Lady Crestwick. Verena's smile was knife-sharp. One hears things, my dear. Servants talk, particularly when properly motivated. Indeed, Adrian said, his tone deceptively casual. And what motivation might prompt such talk this evening? Who can say? Verena replied with affected innocence. Those scandals rarely remain contained for long. Like water, they find their level and their audience. Before either could respond, a murmur swept through the gathering as the Countess of Arbrook returned, her expression carefully composed, though her colour was high. Beside her walked Sir Ardent, his satisfaction evident despite his attempt at solemnity. He has made his move, Adrian murmured. Remember, refuse any private audience. Mariana nodded almost imperceptibly as the Countess made her way toward them, her path direct and purposeful. Lady Mariana, Lady Arbrook said, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by those nearby, might I trouble you for a moment of your time? A matter has arisen that requires your attention. Of course, Countess, Mariana replied, maintaining her composure, though I confess I cannot imagine what matter might concern me at such an hour. It is of a delicate nature, the Countess said, glancing meaningfully toward a side door. Perhaps we might speak privately? Mariana smiled with careful politeness. I'm sure anything you wish to discuss can be addressed here among friends. I have no secrets that require such discretion. The Countess's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. My dear, I assure you this matter would be better addressed away from curious ears. Forgive me, Lady Arbrook, Adrian interjected smoothly, but Lady Mariana has only just agreed to partner me in the next musical arrangement. Perhaps afterward. Sir Ardent stepped forward, his thin smile firmly in place. Surely a dance can wait, Your Grace, when a lady's reputation hangs in the balance. A hush fell over the immediate vicinity as the implication of his words registered. Mariana felt rather than saw the attention of the gathering shift toward their small group, curiosity and anticipation evident in the sudden stillness. My reputation, she said clearly, meeting Sir Ardent's gaze directly, has withstood greater tests than mysterious summons and veiled insinuations, sir. I see no reason to indulge in theatrics when plain speaking would suffice. Well said, Lady Mariana, came Lady Pennington's voice as the elderly dowager joined their circle, her expression one of keen interest. In my experience, scandals thrive in shadows and wither in daylight. If there is something to be said, let it be said openly. The Countess looked uncomfortable, caught between social protocol and whatever plan had been set in motion. This is most irregular, she murmured. Indeed, Adrian agreed, his voice carrying easily in the now silent room. Almost as irregular as a banker interfering in parliamentary matters through threat and innuendo. Sir Ardent's smile vanished. You overstep, Your Grace. Do I? Adrian countered, his tone deceptively mild. Or do I merely name what others have observed but dared not speak? Your opposition to the Factory Safety Bill is well known, Sir Ardent, as is your willingness to employ unconventional methods to achieve your aims. The banker's face flushed with anger. You make dangerous accusations, Duke. No more dangerous than fabricating scandal to intimidate a member of Parliament, Adrian replied, or involving an innocent woman in your machinations. Lady Crestwick, sensing the tide turning, attempted to salvage the situation. Really, Your Grace, such dramatics are unbecoming. I'm certain Sir Ardent has no interest in your political affairs. Oh, but he does, came a new voice from the edge of the gathering. All heads turned to see Lord Ellingham entering, accompanied by a young woman in plain but respectable attire. Her face was pale, her expression a mixture of fear and defiance. "Miss Sarah Winters," Bram announced, "formerly employed in Sir Ardent's household. She has a rather interesting tale to tell regarding instructions she received this evening." Sir Ardent's face drained of colour. "This is outrageous. The girl is clearly deranged or has been bribed to slander me." "I ain't been bribed," the young woman said firmly, though her hands trembled. "But I was told I'd get £10 if I came here and told lies about Lady Mariana Lorne. Said I should claim I saw her meeting a gentleman in secret last spring, behaving improperly." A gasp rippled through the gathering. Lady Pennington's eyes narrowed with interest. "And who gave you these instructions, child?" The girl hesitated, then lifted her chin. "It was Sir Ardent's man, Jenkins. Said his master would make it worth my while and that no harm would come to the lady, just that some political business would be settled." "Lies," Sir Ardent hissed. "Absolute fabrication." "Perhaps," Lord Ellingham agreed pleasantly, "though I imagine Jenkins might corroborate her story if properly questioned. He seems to have developed a sudden desire to cooperate, particularly when faced with the alternative of transportation for conspiracy." The banker's face contorted with fury. "You dare threaten my servant?" "No threat," Adrian replied calmly. "Merely an observation regarding the legal consequences of conspiracy to commit slander and attempting to interfere with parliamentary proceedings. Both quite serious matters, I believe." The Countess of Arbrook, evidently realizing her role in the affair, stepped back with visible dismay. "I had no knowledge of any scheme," she said hastily. "I was merely informed that a young woman had arrived with information concerning a guest. As hostess, I felt obliged to investigate." "Of course, Countess," Lady Pennington said dryly. "Your hospitality is beyond reproach, as always." Sir Ardent, seeing his plan crumbling, attempted one final gambit. "You may have thwarted this particular approach, Your Grace, but the fact remains, your political stance will cost you dearly. There are others who share my concerns regarding this bill, others with far more influence and far less scruples." "No doubt," Adrian agreed, "and they shall be addressed in turn. But you, Sir Ardent, have made a critical error." "And what might that be?" the banker asked with a sneer. Adrian's expression hardened. "You threatened someone under my protection. That is not merely a tactical mistake, it is an unforgivable offense." The simple statement, delivered with quiet intensity, sent a ripple of reaction through the watching crowd. Mariana felt a curious warmth spreading through her chest, despite the gravity of the moment. Sir Ardent's gaze darted around the gathering, assessing his suddenly precarious position. The Ton's collective attention had shifted, their judgment now falling upon him rather than Mariana. His scheme exposed, his reputation teetering, he attempted to salvage what dignity remained. "This evening has become tedious," he announced, straightening his waistcoat with affected nonchalance. "Countess, I thank you for your hospitality, but I find I must depart." "Indeed," Lady Arbrook replied, her tone distinctly cooler than before. "Perhaps that would be best." As Sir Ardent made his way toward the exit, the gathered nobility parted before him, their expressions ranging from disapproval to outright contempt. Lady Crestwick, sensing the shift in social winds, quickly distanced herself, engaging a nearby matron in animated conversation as if the entire episode had been of no interest to her whatsoever. Mariana felt Adrian's hand touch hers briefly, a gesture of reassurance hidden from general view by the folds of her gown. "It is not over," he murmured. "He represents interests far more powerful than himself, but the immediate danger has passed." "Thanks to your foresight," she acknowledged quietly. "And your courage," he countered. A lesser woman would have fled at the first hint of scandal. As the gathering gradually resumed its normal patterns, conversation flowing once more, though now centered on the dramatic confrontation, Mariana found herself the recipient of curious but largely sympathetic glances. The madre-pearl bracelet at her wrist no longer felt cold but warm against her skin, as if reflecting the unexpected turn of events. Lady Pennington approached, her shrewd eyes missing nothing. "Well played, my dears," she said, her voice low enough that only they could hear. "Though I suspect this is merely the opening move in a longer game." "Indeed," Adrian agreed, "Sir Ardent's masters will not surrender so easily." "Then you are fortunate," the Dowager observed, with a meaningful glance between them, "to face them together rather than separately." As she moved away, Mariana found herself wondering at the truth in the elderly woman's words. For all the danger that remained, for all the wounds of the past that had yet to heal fully, there was undeniable strength in standing beside Adrian rather than apart from him. Whether that strength would prove sufficient for the challenges ahead remained to be seen. But for the first time since his return, Mariana allowed herself to consider possibilities beyond mere survival. Possibilities that included, perhaps, a future where trust might be rebuilt and hearts mended. The remainder of the evening unfolded with a curious mixture of tension and relief. Though Sir Ardent had departed in disgrace, the ripples of his failed scheme continued to spread through the gathering. Mariana found herself the object of increased attention, some sympathetic, some merely curious, but none overtly hostile. The Tun, ever sensitive to shifts in social standing, had recognized the Duke's public declaration of protection as significant. "You appear to have weathered the storm admirably," Lord Ellingham observed as they walked along the edge of the ballroom, observing the dancing couples, "though I suspect calmer waters remain elusive for the present." "Indeed," Mariana agreed. "Sir Ardent's departure marks a battle won, not a war concluded." Bram nodded. "His associates will not abandon their cause so easily. The factory safety bill represents a significant threat to their profits. Profits built on suffering," she said quietly. "Children working 16-hour days in dangerous conditions, women laboring for pittances in airless rooms." "You speak with unexpected passion on the subject," Bram noted. Mariana's fingers touched her bracelet absently. "Perhaps not so unexpected. My father spoke often of the need for reform before his passing. He would have supported the Duke's efforts wholeheartedly." "Your father was a man of principle," Bram agreed. "As it seems is the Duke, despite appearances to the contrary 2 years ago." Before Mariana could respond, Lady Pennington approached, her ancient face alight with mischievous interest. "My dear, you have become the evening sensation without setting foot on the dance floor. Most impressive." "Hardly my intention, Lady Pennington," Mariana replied with a small smile. "I would have preferred a quieter evening." "Nonsense," the Dowager said firmly. "After 2 years of polite obscurity, you deserve a triumphant return. And what could be more triumphant than having a Duke publicly declare you under his protection? Half the unmarried ladies in London would trade places with you in an instant." Mariana felt heat rise in her cheeks. His Grace acted from a sense of honor, nothing more. Lady Pennington's shrewd eyes twinkled. "Honor, is it? How convenient a word for more complicated sentiments." "Lady Pennington," Bram interjected, clearly sensing Mariana's discomfort, "I believe Lord Hatherton was hoping to consult with you regarding the hospital committee." "Was he indeed?" the elderly woman replied, entirely unconvinced. "How fortunate that I find committee matters so utterly tedious this evening. No, I much prefer to observe the more interesting developments at hand." Her gaze shifted to where Adrian stood, conversing with several gentlemen, his tall figure commanding attention even in such distinguished company. As if sensing their observation, he glanced in their direction, his expression warming perceptibly upon meeting Mariana's eyes. "See," Lady Pennington murmured, "honor has never looked quite so besotted." "You mistake the situation entirely," Mariana protested, though her quickened pulse suggested otherwise. "My dear," the Dowager said kindly, "I have observed the human heart in all its folly for over 6 decades. Trust me when I say that the Duke's interest extends well beyond honorable protection. The question remains whether you will allow your justifiable caution to overrule what your heart clearly desires." Before Mariana could formulate a response to this uncomfortably accurate assessment, a footman approached with a silver salver bearing a sealed note. "For Lady Mariana Lorne," he announced. After the evening's events, she hesitated to accept any communication. Lord Ellingham stepped forward. "Perhaps I should examine it first," he suggested. "That won't be necessary," came Adrian's voice, as he joined their small group, having evidently observed the footman's approach. "The message is from me." Surprised, Mariana accepted the folded paper, breaking the seal to reveal a brief message in Adrian's distinctive hand. "The conservatory. 10 minutes. Important developments. Is everything well, Your Grace?" she asked, careful to maintain a neutral tone despite the curious observers surrounding them. "A matter requires attention," he replied with equal discretion. "Nothing of immediate concern, but worthy of discussion." Lady Pennington observed this exchange with unconcealed interest. "How mysterious. I do hope it's nothing that would distress Lady Mariana further this evening." "Quite the contrary," Adrian assured her. "I believe the information may prove reassuring." The Dowager's eyes twinkled. "The conservatory is particularly lovely this evening, I'm told. The night-blooming Sirius has opened, a rare occurrence indeed." Mariana fought to maintain her composure, recognizing the older woman's not-so-subtle encouragement of a private meeting. "I shall look forward to your report, Your Grace," she said formally. As Adrian bowed and withdrew, Lady Pennington leaned closer. "Propriety is well and good, my dear, but sometimes truth requires a momentary breach of convention. The conservatory has a most convenient side entrance near the East Gallery." "Lady Pennington!" Mariana exclaimed, genuinely shocked by the suggestion. The Dowager merely smiled. "I shall engage Lord Ellingham in riveting conversation about hospital committees for, say, 15 minutes. What you do with that time is entirely your concern." Before either could respond to this outrageous proposal, the elderly woman had taken Bram's arm firmly. "Come, Lord Ellingham, you must tell me about those fascinating improvements to the surgical ward. Lady Mariana, I believe the East Gallery contains that Gainsborough you admired earlier." With this transparent pretext established, the Dowager steered a bemused Lord Ellingham away, leaving Mariana momentarily alone with her dilemma. Propriety dictated she remain in public view, particularly after the evening's scandal. Prudence suggested avoiding any situation that might revive rumors or provide ammunition to Adrian's enemies. Yet something beyond both, perhaps the same courage that had enabled her to face Sir Ardent's scheming without flinching, urged her toward the East Gallery and the conservatory beyond. "Important developments," Adrian had written. After everything that had transpired, did she not deserve to know what new information might affect her safety or reputation? With a deep breath, Mariana made her decision. Moving with casual grace through the gathering, she approached the East Gallery as if indeed interested in examining the artwork displayed there. Once certain she was unobserved, she continued to the small side door that led to the Countess's famous conservatory. The glass-enclosed space appeared empty at first glance, a verdant sanctuary illuminated by strategically placed lanterns that cast a gentle glow over exotic plants and flowering vines. The air hung heavy with mingled perfumes, jasmine, gardenia, and yes, the distinctive scent of night-blooming cereus, its magnificent white blooms open to the evening air. "Mariana." Adrian's voice came from deeper within the conservatory, where shadows gathered among taller palms. He stepped forward, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Thank you for coming." "Your note suggested urgency," she replied, maintaining a proper distance between them. "Has something else occurred?" "Yes, though not what you might fear." He withdrew a folded paper from his waistcoat pocket. "This arrived by messenger not half an hour ago, from Lord Chamberlain himself." Mariana's brow furrowed. "The Lord Chamberlain? What interest could he have in tonight's events?" "Not tonight's events specifically," Adrian explained, "but rather their broader implications. It seems Sir Ardent's association with certain foreign interests has drawn attention in quarters more powerful than he anticipated." "Foreign interests?" she echoed, genuinely surprised. "French manufacturing concerns with significant investments in child labor," Adrian clarified. "They stand to lose considerably should similar reforms take hold across the Channel, and they would resort to threats and fabricated scandals to protect their investments," Mariana said, understanding dawning. "How despicable." "Indeed." Adrian's expression hardened momentarily before softening as he regarded her. "But their scheme has backfired spectacularly. Lord Chamberlain indicates that the Crown now takes particular interest in seeing the factory safety bill passed without further interference." "That's wonderful news," Mariana said sincerely. "Those children will have protection at last." "Yes," he hesitated, then continued more quietly. "But there is another matter I wish to discuss." Away from curious ears and watchful eyes, something in his tone caused her heart to quicken. "What matter is that, Your Grace?" "Us," he said simply. "What lies between us, Mariana? What was broken 2 years ago and what might yet be mended?" She drew a careful breath, conscious of dangerous territory. "I'm not certain this is an appropriate topic for such a setting." "Perhaps not," he acknowledged. "But after tonight, after nearly losing you again to schemes and threats, I find propriety less compelling than honesty." "Adrian," she began, then stopped, uncertain how to proceed. "I left you," he said quietly, "without explanation, without farewell. I allowed you to believe I had simply abandoned our understanding." "Yes," she said, the single word carrying 2 years of pain. "I believed I was protecting you," he continued, "that by severing all connection, by allowing society to think I had merely tired of your company, you would be beneath the notice of those who threatened you to control me. You might have trusted me with the truth," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "Given me the choice of how to face such danger." "Yes," he agreed without hesitation. "That was my gravest error, Mariana. not in leaving to protect you, but in denying you agency in that decision, in treating you as something fragile rather than someone strong. The frank admission caught her off guard. She had expected justifications, explanations, perhaps even subtle shifting of responsibility. Instead, he offered unvarnished acknowledgement of his fundamental mistake. "You have changed," she observed softly. "As have you," he replied. "We are neither of us the same people we were 2 years ago." "No," she agreed. "We are not." A brief silence fell between them, filled with the scent of night flowers and possibilities neither had yet dared to name. The madrepearl bracelet felt warm against Mariana's skin, no longer a reminder of loss, but perhaps of something waiting to be redefined. "What do you want, Adrian?" she asked finally. "Beyond protection, beyond making amends, what do you seek from me now?" He stepped closer, though still maintaining a respectful distance. "Everything I was too much a coward to ask for 2 years ago. Your trust if I can earn it again. Your companionship. Your hand when you feel ready to offer it." His voice lowered. "Your heart, though I know I forfeited any claim to it long ago." The raw honesty in his words left her momentarily speechless. Outside, the music from the ballroom continued, distant and dreamlike, while here among the flowers and shadows, something fragile and new seemed to be taking shape. "Trust is not rebuilt in a single evening," she said carefully. "No," he agreed. "It requires time, patience, and consistent truth, all of which I offer freely, for as long as necessary." Mariana touched the madrepearl bracelet, its smooth surface grounding her in this moment of unexpected vulnerability. "And if I require a great deal of time, if my caution proves stubborn," Adrian's smile held no expectation, only gentle understanding. "Then I shall demonstrate an equal stubbornness in proving myself worthy of your eventual trust." Something shifted in Mariana's heart, not a complete transformation, not an erasure of past wounds, but a willingness to consider what might yet be possible between them. "Very well," she said softly. "I shall permit you to try." His expression brightened with cautious hope. "That is more than I dared expect and all I could ask for now." From somewhere in the main house, a clock began to chime, reminding them of the world beyond this quiet sanctuary. "We should return," Mariana said reluctantly, "before our absence is noted." "Of course," Adrian agreed, "though I confess I am tempted to linger here, away from prying eyes and social expectations." "As am I," she admitted. "But after tonight's narrow escape from scandal, prudence would suggest caution." He nodded, offering his arm with formal correctness. "Allow me to escort you through the garden path. It emerges near the main salon, where we might rejoin the gathering separately to avoid speculation." As they walked together through the lamplit garden, Mariana was acutely conscious of his proximity, of the strange mixture of familiarity and newness that characterized their renewed connection. Whatever path lay ahead, it would not be simple or without obstacles. Sir Ardent's disgrace represented only one enemy neutralized, not the conclusion of all danger. Yet for the first time in 2 years, Mariana found herself looking toward the future with something beyond resignation, with hope, fragile but genuine, that hearts once broken might yet be mended, and trust, once shattered, might be rebuilt even stronger than before. 3 days later, Mariana stood beside Lord Ellingham in the Visitors' Gallery of Parliament, watching as members filed into the chamber for the crucial vote on the Factory Safety Bill. The gallery was unusually crowded, word having spread of the dramatic confrontation at Lady Arbrook's gathering and its connection to the proposed legislation. "Quite the attendance," Bram observed quietly. "Nothing draws the ton like the possibility of political drama combined with personal intrigue." "A cynical but accurate assessment," Mariana replied, adjusting her bonnet slightly to better observe the proceedings below. "Though I confess, I find myself unexpectedly invested in the outcome." "Not so unexpected," he corrected gently. "The bill's champion has become rather important to you once more, has he not?" Mariana felt heat rise in her cheeks. Though she had shared nothing of her conversation with Adrian in the conservatory, Bram's perceptive nature had evidently detected the subtle shift in her demeanor these past days. "The Duke's political endeavors are admirable," she said carefully. "Indeed they are," Bram agreed, his kind eyes holding no judgment, as is his determination to right past wrongs, both public and private. Before she could formulate a response to this observation, a ripple of movement below drew their attention. Adrian had entered the chamber, his tall figure commanding attention even amid the distinguished assembly. Several members approached him immediately, hands extended in greeting, or shoulders inclined for private conversation. He has consolidated support remarkably well, Bram noted, particularly given the opposition he faced initially. Sir Ardent's disgrace seems to have discouraged some of that opposition, Mariana observed. Few wish to be associated with such tactics, even if they share his objectives. And the Crown's interest, however unofficial, carries significant weight, Bram added. Lord Chamberlain's involvement changed many minds overnight. Mariana nodded, her gaze following Adrian as he moved through the chamber with confident purpose. In the 3 days since Lady Arbrook's gathering, they had met only once, briefly, at Lady Pennington's small musical evening. Their interaction had been properly circumspect, though the elderly dowager had observed them with undisguised interest and subsequently cornered Mariana for a thoroughly embarrassing interrogation regarding her intentions toward that handsome duke. "The session begins," Bram murmured as the speaker called for order. The proceedings unfolded with ceremonial precision, opening statements giving way to formal debate as proponents and opponents of the bill presented their arguments. When Adrian rose to speak, Mariana found herself leaning forward slightly, captivated by the quiet authority with which he addressed the chamber. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying clearly to the gallery, "we have before us today not merely a piece of legislation, but a test of our collective conscience. The Factory Safety Bill asks nothing more radical than that we extend basic protections to those most vulnerable in our society, children who labor in dangerous conditions, women who work unconscionable hours for meager wages, laborers whose safety is sacrificed for greater profit." A murmur ran through the chamber, some approving, some dissenting. Adrian continued undeterred. "We have heard arguments regarding economic necessity, regarding the supposed natural order of society, regarding the potential impact on British manufacturing interests. These concerns have been addressed in the bill's provisions, which allow for reasonable transition periods and appropriate accommodations." His gaze swept the chamber, commanding attention. "What cannot be accommodated, what must not be tolerated, is the continued sacrifice of human dignity and safety upon the altar of profit. England stands at the forefront of industrial progress. Let us ensure that such progress includes moral advancement as well as mechanical." As Adrian continued his address, Mariana felt a curious pride warming her chest. This was the man she had glimpsed beneath the polished exterior 2 years ago, passionate about justice, articulate in its defense, unwavering in the face of opposition. "He speaks remarkably well," came a voice behind them. Mariana turned to find Lady Pennington settling herself on the bench with surprising agility for one of her advanced years. "Though I suspect you already knew that, my dear." "Lady Pennington," Mariana acknowledged with a small smile. "I didn't expect to see you here today." "At my age, one selects one's entertainments with care," the dowager replied dryly. "Parliamentary proceedings typically rank somewhat below watching paint dry, but today's vote promises genuine drama. And I do so enjoy watching a worthy cause triumph, particularly when championed by a man seeking redemption in more than one arena." Her knowing gaze made Mariana's cheeks warm once more. "The Duke's personal matters are entirely separate from his political endeavors." "Are they indeed?" Lady Pennington looked unconvinced. "I rather think they inform each other. A man who recognizes his mistakes in the personal sphere is more likely to advocate wisely in the public one. And a man willing to stand against powerful interests to protect the vulnerable might also possess the courage to pursue a second chance at happiness despite society's raised eyebrows." Below, Adrian had concluded his remarks to considerable applause from his supporters. The opposition rose to present counter-arguments, though Mariana noted their ranks appeared thinner than anticipated. "Sir Ardent is conspicuously absent," Bram observed quietly, "as are several of his closest associates," Lady Pennington added. "Curious how quickly rats desert a listing ship." The debate continued for another hour, points and counterpoints presented with varying degrees of eloquence and conviction. Throughout, Adrian remained attentive and engaged, responding to challenges with reasoned argument rather than rhetorical flourish. When the time came for the final vote, an expectant hush fell over the chamber and gallery alike. "This is the moment," Bram murmured. "All his work, all the opposition and threats, it comes to this." As the clerk began calling the roll, Mariana found herself holding her breath, her fingers unconsciously seeking the madre-pearl bracelet at her wrist. Name by name, vote by vote, the tally grew. Though she had no direct stake in the outcome, she felt each affirmation as a small victory, each opposition as a personal disappointment. You're quite invested for someone claiming mere admiration of political endeavours, Lady Pennington observed with gentle amusement. The bill would protect thousands of children, Mariana replied, deflecting the implied question. Anyone with a conscience should be invested in such an outcome. Indeed, the Dowager agreed, though I suspect your investment encompasses the bill's champion as well as its beneficiaries. Before Mariana could formulate a suitable response, a growing murmur from the chamber drew their attention back to the proceedings. The final votes had been tallied, and the clerk was presenting the results to the speaker. Adrian stood perfectly still, his expression composed, but his posture revealing the tension that had built through the long session. "The ayes have it," the speaker announced, his voice ringing through the suddenly silent chamber. "The factory safety bill is passed." A cheer erupted from the supporters, quickly tempered by the formal setting but nonetheless heartfelt. Adrian accepted congratulations from those nearby, his relief evident beneath his dignified acknowledgement. When he glanced up toward the visitors' gallery, his eyes found Mariana's immediately, as if drawn by some invisible thread. In that moment of shared triumph, something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition of shared values that transcended their complicated personal history. Mariana smiled, a genuine expression of approval and pride that she made no attempt to disguise. Adrian's answering smile, brief but radiant, sent a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the crowded gallery. "Well," Lady Pennington said with satisfaction, "that's settled then, both the bill and I suspect certain other matters as well." "Nothing is settled beyond today's vote," Mariana protested, though her tone lacked conviction. The elderly dowager patted her hand with surprising gentleness. "My dear, at my age, one develops a certain instinct for these things. The Duke has won his political battle. I rather think his personal campaign shows equal promise of success given time." As the chamber began to empty, members filing out with varying expressions of satisfaction or disappointment, Mariana found herself wondering if the perceptive old woman might be right. The path ahead remained uncertain, the wounds of the past not yet fully healed. Trust once broken could not be instantly restored even with the best intentions. Yet as she observed Adrian below, accepting congratulations with gracious humility, she could not deny the renewed connection between them. Tentative still, fragile in many ways, but undeniably real. Whatever might come next, today marked not merely a legislative victory, but perhaps the first step toward a more personal reconciliation. "Shall we offer our congratulations?" Bram suggested, his tone carefully neutral despite what must have been complicated feelings about the situation. "Yes," Mariana agreed, gathering her reticule and gloves. "I believe congratulations are indeed in order." As they made their way from the gallery toward the main chamber, Mariana was conscious of curious glances and whispered observations from other visitors. Word of her renewed association with the Duke had spread rapidly through London society, fueled by the dramatic events at Lady Arbrook's gathering. What had once been pitying glances had transformed into speculative interest, a change that brought its own challenges but was decidedly preferable to the social isolation she had endured after Adrian's departure. The madre pearl bracelet at her wrist caught the light as she descended the stairs, its smooth surface no longer a reminder of loss, but perhaps a symbol of resilience and of possibilities yet to unfold. Spring had brought London into full bloom, Hyde Park resplendent with fresh greenery and early flowers that perfumed the morning air. Mariana guided her mare along Rotten Row at a sedate pace, enjoying the warmth of sunshine after the long winter months. Beside her, Adrian rode his bay stallion with easy grace, their conversation flowing comfortably despite the curious glances directed their way by other morning riders. "The implementation proceeds well?" she inquired, referring to the factory safety bill that had now been law for nearly 6 months. "Better than anticipated," he replied, his expression brightening with genuine satisfaction. "The larger factories adapted quickly, and even the smaller mills are making necessary changes ahead of schedule. The first inspector's reports show significant improvements in conditions, particularly for the youngest workers. And the opposition? Has it truly subsided or merely gone underground?" Adrian's smile held a touch of grimness. "Some resistance remains, naturally. Change never comes without struggle. But the more progressive factory owners have discovered that safer conditions actually improve productivity. Workers who are not exhausted or injured perform better. Economic self-interest aligning with moral imperatives," Mariana observed. "A powerful combination." "Indeed," he agreed, "though I confess my interest in such matters has been somewhat divided of late. The slight warmth in his tone brought colour to her cheeks, a reaction she could attribute to the spring sunshine if questioned. "Your parliamentary duties remain demanding, I'm sure." "They do," he acknowledged, "though I find myself increasingly preoccupied with more personal considerations." 6 months had passed since the dramatic confrontation at Lady Arbrook's gathering and the subsequent parliamentary victory. 6 months of careful rebuilding of trust, of conversations both challenging and healing, of a courtship conducted with deliberate patience and respect for the wounds that still required time to mend completely. Their progress had not been without difficulties. There had been moments of doubt, painful discussions of past hurts, careful negotiations of boundaries and expectations, yet through it all, Adrian had demonstrated a consistent honesty and respect that gradually, inevitably, softened Mariana's protective barriers. "Lady Pennington asks about you constantly," she said, deliberately shifting to lighter topics. "She claims you have been neglecting her musical evenings of late." Adrian laughed, the sound warming Mariana's heart. "The good lady's musical evenings are merely thinly veiled opportunities for her to interrogate us about our relationship. I believe her exact words to me last week were, 'For heaven's sake, Duke, my remaining time on earth is limited. Must you proceed at such a glacial pace?'" Mariana couldn't suppress her own laughter. "She said something remarkably similar to me yesterday, though she expressed it as concern that we might both be old and grey before any formal announcement was made." Their horses walked side by side, hooves falling in synchronized rhythm on the packed earth of the riding path. Around them, the park hummed with the activity of fashionable London taking its morning exercise, yet Mariana felt as if they moved in a private world, connected by understanding that had been hard-won through pain and patience. "Her concern is not entirely misplaced," Adrian said after a moment, his tone shifting to something more serious. "We have proceeded with deliberate care, Mariana, a necessary caution given our history. Yet I find myself wondering if perhaps we have reached a point where certain questions might be addressed more directly." Her heart quickened, though she maintained her outward composure. "What questions did you have in mind, Your Grace?" Adrian guided his mount toward a less frequented path that curved away from the main thoroughfare, beneath a canopy of newly leafed trees. Mariana followed, curiosity mingling with anticipation in her chest. When they reached a small clearing, screened from casual observation by flowering shrubs, he drew his horse to a halt and dismounted with fluid grace. Moving to assist Mariana, his hands encircled her waist with respectful support as she slid from the saddle. His touch lingered a moment longer than strictly necessary, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that sent warmth spreading through her, despite the morning's gentle breeze. "I had thought to arrange a more formal setting for this conversation," he said quietly. "Yet here, amid spring's renewal, seems unexpectedly fitting." "Adrian?" she questioned, her voice softer than intended. He took her gloved hand in his touch gentle, yet certain. "These past months have been a journey of rediscovery for us both, of learning who we have become during our separation, and who we might be together now that circumstances have brought us full circle." The madre-pearl bracelet at her wrist caught the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees, its surface no longer cold but warm against her skin. "A journey with its share of challenges," she acknowledged. "Yes," he agreed, "yet each difficulty overcome has strengthened what lies between us. Each truth spoken, each hurt addressed, has built something I believe might withstand any future storm." Mariana's breath caught as Adrian reached into his waistcoat pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box that he held carefully between them. "I have carried this with me for weeks now, waiting for the moment that felt right. Not rushed, not presumptuous, but honest and hopeful." He opened the box to reveal a ring of extraordinary beauty, an oval sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, set in delicately wrought gold. "This belonged to my grandmother," he explained softly, "a woman of remarkable strength and dignity, who taught me that true love requires both courage and humility, qualities I failed to demonstrate once, but hope I have begun to reclaim." Though she had half expected this moment, its arrival still left Mariana momentarily speechless. Adrian continued, his voice steady despite the vulnerability evident in his eyes. "I left you once believing I acted to protect you. In doing so, I caused pain I can never fully repair, but if you will permit me, Mariana, I would spend the rest of my life ensuring you never doubt my devotion or my respect for your strength again." He lowered himself to one knee before her, a gesture of humility that the proud Duke would have offered to no one else. "Lady Mariana Lorne, Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Not because I can offer protection or position, but because I love you with a depth that absence only strengthened and time has only confirmed." The simple declaration, stripped of artifice or grand rhetoric, touched Mariana more deeply than any elaborate speech could have done. She looked down at the man before her, not the powerful Duke of Valeheart, but Adrian, who had learned from his mistakes and found the courage to begin again. "2 years ago," she said softly, "I dreamed of hearing such words from you. Then came heartbreak, and I convinced myself I would never wish to hear them again." A shadow of pain crossed his features, quickly controlled. "And now?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his posture. Mariana removed her riding glove slowly, then extended her bare hand to him. "And now I find that dreams may die and be reborn stronger than before. That trust, once broken, may be rebuilt with greater care and deeper understanding." Hope dawned in his eyes as he rose to his feet, still holding the ring before her. "Is that a yes, Mariana?" "It is," she confirmed, a smile of genuine joy spreading across her face. "Not because I have forgotten the past, but because I believe in the future we might build together, wiser for what we have endured apart." With reverent care, Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, where it settled as if always meant to rest there. The sapphire caught the spring sunshine, casting blue reflections across their joined hands. "I shall spend my life proving worthy of this trust," he promised, his voice rough with emotion. "And I shall remind you, when necessary, that worthiness comes not from perfection, but from honesty, courage, and the willingness to begin again," she replied. When he leaned forward to seal their engagement with a kiss, Mariana met him halfway, her free hand rising to rest against his chest, where she could feel the steady beating of his heart. The moment was tender rather than passionate, a promise rather than a culmination. Yet it carried a sweetness that neither had dared hope for during the long months of separation and cautious reconciliation. As they drew apart, the sounds of the park returned to Mariana's awareness: birdsong, distant conversation, the gentle nickering of their horses. The world continued its ordinary course around them, yet everything had shifted, transformed by promises spoken and received. "Lady Pennington will be insufferably pleased with herself," she observed with a small laugh. "As will half of London society," Adrian agreed, his smile matching hers, "though I find I care remarkably little for anyone's opinion, save yours." He lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm where the madripearl bracelet rested against her wrist. "You still wear it," he noted, "even after everything." "Always," she said softly, "at first, as a reminder of loss, then as proof of survival. Now perhaps as a symbol of something rebuilt, stronger for having been broken and mended with care." Adrian's gaze held hers, understanding flowing between them without need for further words. Around them, spring continued its ancient work of renewal, buds opening to reveal blossoms, sunlight warming earth long held in winter's grip, a fitting backdrop for two hearts that had found their way back to each other, not despite the pain they had endured, but because of the strength it had forged in them both. And as they remounted their horses to continue their ride, now with a precious secret shared between them soon to be revealed to the waiting world, Mariana knew with quiet certainty that the silence that had claimed the ballroom 2 years ago had been not an ending but a beginning, the first suspended breath of a story that was only now finding its true voice. In the quiet spaces between heartbeats, life teaches us its most profound lessons. 2 years after leaving her in tears, reminds us that true love is not measured by the absence of wounds, but by the courage to heal them together. Time may separate hearts, but it cannot sever souls genuinely meant to find their way back to one another. The path of love is rarely straight. It bends through valleys of misunderstanding, climbs mountains of pride, and sometimes disappears entirely beneath the shadows of fear. Yet even when broken by circumstance or human failing, love possesses a remarkable resilience, a capacity to be reborn stronger, wiser, and more intentional than before. Trust, once shattered, cannot be restored through grand gestures alone. It requires the patient laying of new foundations, brick by brick, truth by truth, until what rises from the ruins stands more steadfast than what came before. In Adrian and Mariana's journey, we see that forgiveness is not the erasing of pain, but the creation of something new despite it, a bridge spanning the chasm of hurt, built of understanding and mutual growth. Perhaps most powerfully, their story reminds us that protecting those we love should never mean denying them agency in their own fate. True partnership embraces vulnerability shared, not burdens carried alone. The Duke's greatest mistake was not in leaving to shield Mariana from danger, but in denying her the right to choose how she would face it. In the end, love's greatest triumph lies not in never falling, but in rising again with humility, wisdom, and a hand extended in hope. Like the madripearl bracelet that witnessed both tears and reconciliation, we too can transform from symbols of what was lost into testaments of what has been reclaimed, stronger for having been broken, more precious for having been restored. Did your heart race alongside Mariana's as the Duke knelt before her in the dappled spring sunshine? Did you feel the years of longing, pain, and cautious hope converge in that perfect moment of renewal? We'd love to hear which moments touched you most deeply in this tale of love reclaimed against all odds. Subscribe now to Victorian Romance, audio stories for more breathtaking historical romances that will transport you to an era of grand passion, noble sacrifice, and love that defies society's constraints. Each week, we bring you new tales of hearts, separated by circumstance but united by destiny. Share in the comments below, have you ever experienced a second chance at love that proved more profound than the first? Or tell us which character resonated most with your own journey, Mariana's resilient dignity, Adrian's journey from pride to humility, or perhaps Lady Pennington's wise perspective on the human heart. Your stories inspire our creation. Your emotions guide our words. Join our community of passionate romance enthusiasts who believe, as we do, that love's greatest triumphs often come after its darkest trials. Thank you from all of us at Victorian Romance, audio stories, for allowing us to accompany you through this journey of heartbreak, growth, and love's ultimate victory. Until our next story unfolds, may your own heart remain open to life's most beautiful possibilities.